Hello my fellow riders and welcome to 2021. Now today we are going to be doing a strip down and clean of a carburetor. So welcome to my first video of 2021. Now 2020 was a pretty poor year for most people, so hopefully 2021 should be a lot better. Now for this tutorial you will need only a couple of tools. So you need a pair of needle nose pliers, number 2 Phillips screwdriver, a flat head screwdriver, and some carburation cleaner or injector cleaner, whichever one you want to use. And something else as well, which if I can get it, is you can get injector or jet cleaning kits, but usually the smallest one for a 50cc carburetor won't actually fit in the holes. So the best thing to use is just like a single strand of copper wire. So as you can see, we're in my shed and we're doing it from home at the minute because TubeBuddy for us isn't actually open until the 4th of January. Now you can hear a slight buzzing in the background. That's my heater because it is like 1 degree outside, so it's really cold. So I'm sorry about that, but you're gonna have to deal with it. So hopefully I will be able to remove that from post. So first we're going to talk about why you would need to clean your carburetor. Usually carburetors, you need to clean them because you might be using bad fuel. You might have some dirt coming through the airbox and going to your carburetor, and the usual symptoms for this is your bike won't idle, your bike's hard to start, and you're losing power. Now the power would be controlled by this, which is a main jet, and on this one it is a 50. Now if you're getting that pop-in sound like on your Yamazaki when you first rev it up, what I would recommend is actually changing the idle jet, which on this is slightly different to your one. Your one would have a tip that you unscrew. On your Yamazaki it'll be a 64 small jet, and we recommend you put in a 72, and that usually helps that problem. But yeah, the pop-in sound, even if you change and clean out your carburetor, it's not going to get rid of that. But anyway, this is not necessarily for the Yamazaki. This can be used for anything, and it doesn't really matter what size the bike is. They're pretty much the same, apart from scooters and some of the big CC bikes. They have a slightly different top end to the carburetor, but we're not going to be going into that. We're going to be going into just the standard carburetor. So we're going to go through some other bits. This is the slide on the Lexmoto Hunter and Lexmoto Aspire. The way that they de-restrict the bike is they have an extended version of this, and if you wanted to de-restrict it, you can buy their one, or you can cut a little bit off. There's a little circle here at the top with a cap on it. If you cut just under that, then you get your full power on that bike. You have the needle, and the needle has a larger way of adjusting the carburetor. So it's got 5 little slots all down there. I don't know if you can see it on the video, but there you go. And you can pull the little retaining clip off. Careful, because they will pop off and go anywhere. So pull that off and then put it onto wherever you want to go. Now the lower you put it, on this, the more amount of fuel that goes into the bike. The higher you put it, the less amount of fuel goes through the bike. But if you do this too much, then you will find that the bike won't run right. So always start in the middle and then work your way up. This is a big adjustment. You can do it with smaller adjustments on another thing I'll show you in a bit. So anyway, so this is the main jet housing, and then this part here is actually the main jet. So the main jet screws into the main jet housing. Then you tighten it up with a screwdriver, flathead. And this is where the piece of wire comes in. It's quite hard working in the cold. Your fingers don't work properly, especially when you're using tiny little bits. Right, so what usually happens with these is down in the jet, down there's a tiny little hole, and that gets blocked up. So what you do is you get your copper wire and you push it down the hole, spin it a couple of times, clean it out, and then you look down the end, look at light and make sure that it's a circle, and this one is actually clean. Same again with the small jet, same principle. You push it down, and this one's the one that you probably won't be able to use the actual kit for because it's too small. So push it down, spin it a bit, pull it out again, put it up to a light and have a look through, and you'll be able to see that it is clean. Also, they've got little holes at the bottom here, and that's to help atomize the fuel coming out of here. So make sure they're clean. Spray them over with the carburation cleaner, and just make sure they're clean as possible. What you'll find with older bikes that have been sitting is in the bottom of the pan here, you'll start seeing some creamy white residue, and that's a good indication that your jets are probably going to be all mucky as well. So this device here is for controlling the amount of fuel that comes from your tank, and it's also got a little push button on the top, so use that. Make sure that is clean. Everything needs to be clean, just make sure there's no debris on it. So what you need to do is get the carburation cleaner and you spray it through this hole, this hole, this hole, and these two holes here, and just make sure that it's all blown through. If you've got an air compressor, it's a good idea to blow some compressed air. Just while we're at this point, I'll show you how the choke works. So what happens is your choke cable is connected to this part here. It pulls down, and that blocks off the air and makes a bike a lot richer. So less air goes in, more fuel goes in, and a bike when it's cold will run perfectly fine like that. When it starts to heat up, you'll find that it doesn't like that sort of mixture, so you open it up and your bike will run properly. If that is held closed like that and you try and ride down the road, it just won't work. So you'll end up cutting out. So we're going to start to put this back together. First off, you get your main jet, put that in this big hole here. With everything on these bikes, you've got to make sure that it's fairly tight, but don't over tighten it because you won't be able to get it off, you might damage it, and you don't want any bits of metal going into the rest of the carburetor. The idle jet goes in here, and the idle jet does what it says. It idles the bike. The main jet is where you get the acceleration from. And what happens with this pin is it goes in the top and blocks up the back of the main jet. So that's what controls the fuel going in and out. So on here, this is another thing that you can have adjustment on. What you're looking at is when you've got this all set up, so we'll put it back together and then I'll explain it. So you've got this little control valve here, goes in there onto this flat pin, goes into the hole which is at the back of the carburetor, and then you get this retaining piece of metal or retaining pipe or whatever you want to call it, and it goes through all the way. This has nothing to secure it. It gets secured by the bottom half of the carburetor. So that goes there. What you're looking at when you're doing this sort of thing is usually you want your float valve to be level with the base of the top of the carburetor. So what happens when the bike runs out of fuel? We'll do it this way. When the bike runs out of fuel, this opens up like that. It lets the fuel in through the control valve, and then it closes as the liquid pushes up on the float. So that's what the bottom of the carburetor looks like. Again, you can spray it with a carburation cleaner or injection cleaner. The other thing that's pretty good for cleaning this sort of thing is brake cleaner. So use that. One thing that I would suggest you try to avoid doing is this gasket here. Don't take it out. If you take it out, the chances are that you're not going to be able to get it back in. So I would avoid that if at all possible. This only goes back on one way. So you can see there's a bigger space here and that there's a bigger space there. So put that back on there. This part here, just make sure that it doesn't get caught on anything because it'll bend, and I'll show you what that's for in a second. So again, you should have 2 of these retaining screws with a squash washer on it, and squash washer is so that it doesn't vibrate loose. So get your Phillips screwdriver. Make sure you use the right screwdriver for this, because otherwise you'll just end up destroying the top of the screw. So put one in finger tight, put the other one in finger tight as well. If you do one up really tight first and then try and do the other one, it means that the carburetor isn't going to be level around here and you might have a leak. So you're best off tightening one up finger tight, tightening the other one up finger tight also. So just like that much, and then give it an extra quarter of a turn after that. So the copper pipe that went up there, that is actually attached to the overflow pipe, and so if your float valve is stuck or isn't working properly and it gets up to this point, instead of dumping all the fuel into your motorbike, it will come out of here. So up at the top of that copper pipe there is a hole, and if the fuel gets above the hole, then it comes out the bottom. This one here is this screw is to stop the fuel coming out on its own. Again, finger tight and then an extra quarter. This is a good way to check whether your bike is has got fuel in the actual carburetor as well. So you can loosen that off a little bit, and then you should have some fuel coming out of the overflow pipe, and that's a good way to. Number one, on a Yamazaki, if they run out of fuel, they tend to get an airlock, and a good way to get rid of the airlock is just undo that, let the fuel flow through for a second, tighten it back up, and then you lose that. So it's always a good thing to do. So make sure that is, as I said, finger tight and a quarter. So that is mainly your carburetor back to where it was originally. And we'll have a look at some of the other stuff. Right, this screw here with a spring is the idle screw. Yep, idle screw. And what this does is on your slide here, you've got a little cutout down the bottom here, and it sits in there like so. Excuse my finger and thumbs, but it sits in there, and this sits, let's see if we can get a better view, on there. And when you tighten the screw up, it pushes it up. When you pull the screw out, it pushes it down. And this just controls how much fuel your bike gets when nothing else is running. So that goes in. I would say tighten it in a little bit, just until you see it start to poke out down the bottom there. You probably won't be able to see this on the video because it's quite short, but yeah, it pokes out at the bottom. The mixture screw controls how much fuel comes out of your carburetor with small adjustments. So when you put this back in, what you want to do is finger tight and then come out 1 1/4 turns, and then you can set that as you need to afterwards. So 1 1/4 and then set it to whatever you need. Usually if it's any more than 2.5 turns, then you would use the needle and the large adjuster to adjust it to larger points. Now this is where it gets a little bit fiddly. Oh, I'm dropping stuff. So what you need to do is get the needle, put it down. Remember that the bit with the edge on it here needs to be down. So put that in so that it's sitting under there like so. Then get this little M spring. Remember, this will fly off if you're not careful, so be careful. Also, before I forgot to say, down this little slide here, when you get your accelerator cable, so it goes through here, through the top cap, through the spring, and then it goes down there and attaches at the bottom of the slide. It is tricky to do, but it can be done. So where am I at? So the M retaining spring, hold on to it like that with your pair of pliers. Now this is rather fiddly. I don't know if I'm pulling faces here whilst I'm doing this, but I usually do when I'm concentrating. So you've got to make sure that the open part of the top of the M is in line with your the cutout down here. So on the inside of your carburetor, on the opposite side to where your idle screw is, there is a little plastic runner in there, and this line down here has to go down the little runner, because otherwise it won't rev properly, and what you'll find is your accelerator will be held open, and when you start your bike it'll rev like hell. Yeah, like hell. And that is just a quick tutorial on how to take apart, clean your carburetor. Remember to always do it on a workspace that is clean and tidy, because things out there will probably try and spring it off to different places. Now we've tried a slightly different way of recording these videos today, a hands down view. Hopefully I haven't messed it up too much, and hopefully you can get all the information that you need from this video. This is the first time I've tried doing this, so be gentle with your comments, shall we say. So thank you for watching my video. I hope it has helped you out a lot in understanding how a carburetor works and how you can clean it at home. As I said, remember to do it on a clean and tidy work surface so that you don't lose anything in with everything else. There is lots of tiny components. Everything that you need to clean this, there will be a link in the description, and you can get it off of Amazon. If you buy it off of Amazon, Riding Reviews gets a little bit of a kickback off of that. It's not a lot, but every little helps. Now, YouTube have changed their algorithm slightly, and they are starting to let us do things like TikTok videos. So I may be doing a couple of those in the future, see how they pan out, but they're only 60 seconds long, so we will see how that works. Also, YouTube are allowing people with lower subscriber rates to start doing like join members only areas. If you're interested in any of these join or member only areas, please comment below, because I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to start doing this yet. If you guys want it, then I will do it. If you don't, then there's no point in me doing it, because it will just take up loads of my time and there's no point. So, as I said before, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you've learned something. Please comment below if you've got anything to say. Subscribe to my channel to stay updated to all my latest content. Remember to hit that notification bell to stay updated. Up here we're going to have some more tutorial videos. Down here we're going to have the YouTube's own whatever they think you're going to like. And remember, hit that subscribe button in the middle to stay updated.